Hello, welcome to another World of UX podcast. This is your host, Dr. Darren Hood. Thanks for taking the time to join us. Thanks for taking the time to tune in. Welcome those of you listening for the first time. Today, we're going to continue in a series that we've been presenting on harsh truths about UX maturity, just helping people to understand what UX maturity is about, the things that it connects to, because traditionally, and I've been explaining that for those of you that are new, a little recap. I've been explaining how that when folks first learn about UX maturity, we pretty much always learn about it from the perspective of how it pertains to how UX is supported at an organization. How many champions do you have, or do you have any champion in leadership? Do you have any representation? Do you have a lot of support? How easy is it to get your work done? Because there's a lot of obstacles in getting UX work done. And that's because UX maturity from an organizational perspective varies from organization to organization. This is indeed accurate. However, something that I learned over the course of my career, and for those of you that don't know much about me, I've been doing UX work now for over 30 years, since before it was called UX. I've seen the ebbs and the flows. I've seen things change. I've seen the different form factors that we have to design for. I've seen different approaches to the work. I've seen the way that the discipline has grown, that it has pivoted. And please know and understand, when I say that, it's only pivoted because the form factors are different. It's only pivoted because the different types of customers have changed a bit. UX was never about screens. It was only about digital experiences because of the advent of the internet and some things to that extent. UX was called something else prior to it being called UX, and the commonality, if you will, the commonplace representation or usage of that acronym only came about in around 2008, 2009. The vast majority of us were called interaction designers or information architects, but human-computer interaction preceded UX as a discipline. Experience design was one of the first titles that was ever ascribed to us, one of the first monikers that was ever ascribed to us. It didn't catch on, but work that actually is related to what we now call user experience even dates back to the early 1900s. So please know and understand that when we talk about UX, we're talking about it as it exists today. We're not usually talking about it from the 1905 perspective, because we just don't, that's not the dominant aspect of the discipline in its representation today. So just so everybody understands, but understand that I'm coming from it from a perspective of what I have observed over the course of my 30 plus years or so. And I also understand the history of UX, which a lot of people talking about UX don't. As a matter of fact, a lot of people today who present themselves as thought leaders, pretty much anybody who tells you they're a thought leader, you can ignore them and you will not have missed out on anything, because there's a lot of people who are trying to achieve celebritism, as I talked about in a recent episode. They're trying to really be seen. They're trying to get clicks. They're trying to be a go-to person, or presenting themselves. They're selling themselves as somebody who is someone you simply can't do without. And it isn't anything like that at all. The people who we need to pay attention to are usually just presenting the truth that they know, and they leave it at that. And those are the people, as I've come up in the discipline, the people that I tapped into early on, that's what they did. The Polar Bear book, we know it as the Polar Bear book that talked about information architecture, what was published in the late 1990s. When that book was published, they weren't out there trying to get everybody to see them as somebody that was high and mighty and trying to achieve celebritism. They were just presenting truth that they knew about the discipline, which was really critical at the time, information architecture, something that has been overlooked and put aside by many people that are entering the discipline these days. And that includes the educational arms, if you will. A lot of them pushed a lot of the fundamentals aside. And so I understand what's happened from a historical standpoint. A lot of the newer people who are going from entry level to senior to lead to manager in less than 2 years. And I know there are some edge cases. I'm not talking about those. And I talked about that recently. I explained that. But from a standard perspective of advancing in the discipline, that's not doable. That's not accurate. It's not a proper representation. And based on the topic that we're talking about now, it contradicts everything associated with UX maturity. A person cannot advance that quickly in the discipline. It is extremely complex. This is a science. When a person is practicing UX properly, they are a scientist, and it takes a while to become a skilled and a trustworthy scientist. You can go fast if you're playing with tools. If you're just a visual designer, you can go fast. It looks like you're going fast anyway, but not if you're operating in UX. There's just a few truth bombs that we're just dropping off for folks here now. But I'm just laying a foundation because what I want to talk to you about tonight, the title for this segment of Harsh Truths about UX maturity, I'm going to talk to you about UX maturity and the educational gap. And I'm going to sort of kill two birds with one stone because I want to talk to you about education and what education is, but I also want to spend time talking to folks tonight about the gap. There is a gap in education, a gap that a lot of people are not aware of, are not thinking about. And interestingly, when you don't have this gap filled that I'm going to present tonight, it will detrimentally impact you as a practitioner. It will detrimentally impact your team. It will detrimentally impact the discipline as a whole. Everything you know about UX, the way you represent your team, the value proposition that you have in your organization, all these things are going to be detrimentally impacted if this gap that I'm going to present is not addressed, if you don't fill it. And giving you a little bit of the end from the beginning, most people ignore the gap purposely. What I'm going to talk to you about, people avoid it because they don't want to talk about it. They feel like talking about what I'm going to share with you tonight is more of a Debbie Downer kind of thing. And the thing is, I use this metaphor all the time. If you have a flat tire, you need to take care of it. If the road is out, few metaphors, if the road is out, you need to pay attention to that. If there's construction in a particular area and it's along the line of a route that you're trying to take on a trip, you need to plan for how you're going to reach your destination in light of the fact that there's construction along the route that you thought you were going to go. You have to pivot. You have to change. You cannot do things the standard way. This speaks to people who are too addicted to processes, addicted to doing everything the exact same way, trying to take everything about UX and putting it in a box, putting it in a formula, only to have that formula blow up because something popped up that your formula does not account for. And so this educational gap that I'm going to talk about, and I won't share it fully until the end, we need it. I talk about these things all the time. I know other people that talk about these things all the time. Folks want to talk about how you do the work all the time. But if you don't talk about this gap, you're going to end up being in trouble. You're going to come face to face with a situation that you do not know how to handle because you have not taken the time to figure this out. You want to learn Figma, you want to learn information architecture, you want to learn research, you want to learn all these other things, you want to learn about AI. But if you don't learn about this gap, you're going to be caught in a very, very bad situation. And you are going to regret not paying attention to what I'm presenting here today. It's not popular, what I'm about to talk about today. A lot of people don't talk about it because they don't know what to do. They never learned how to do it. And they don't want to talk to people about what they lack. So they just steer people away. And do you need to know how to do the work? Absolutely. You need to know how to do the work. But you also need to know how to account for situations when you have the unexpected arise, when you have that thing that has absolutely nothing to do with the work, but has something to do with, and it impacts you getting the work done. So that makes what I'm about to talk to you extremely relevant. And the fact that some people steer folks away from this is doing people a disservice. It's really associated with a lack of realism. And when you lack realism, life is real. So when someone lacks realism in their presentation, yeah, they're talking to you about how to do the work. Hey, download that stuff. It's critical. Embrace it. But you need to embrace this uncomfortable stuff that I'm going to present to you tonight. But let's get on our way, shall we? Let us get on our way. Now, what is education? Actually, think about it. What is education? So education is really about the knowledge or skill that a person obtains to develop the learning process. It's the process of learning, in short. It can be defined as, and these definitions came straight out of a dictionary. Education is about a program of instruction or a specified kind of approach to the learning experience. Education is a field of study concerned with the pedagogy. This is if you are an educator, with the pedagogy of teaching and learning. So that's the definition that applies to people who are educators. So critical, important things that we need to know there. Education is the act or process of educating. I hate those definitions, but it is what it is. It's the result of educating. And this is determined by the knowledge, the skill, or the discipline that the person is acquiring through said education. Last definition, and then I'm going to give you mine. The act or process of training by a prescribed or customary course of study or discipline. All very formal, all very structured, all very textbook-oriented definitions, if you will. Now, here's one, a practical one that I want to present to you. I'll call this the basic definition of education. It is that's up there. Education is about preparing someone to operate confidently and effectively in a particular discipline. That's what education is. No matter how extensive it might be, no matter how formal or informal it might be, that's what education is about. The learning experience, a part of education, is about how that is structured, how well it's structured, how effective it is. And as I talked about in a previous episode, when I talked about what consists or what education consists of, it's about presentation, application, and feedback. Presentation is how you present information to someone, the download, the knowledge and skill download, if you will. Application is the opportunity for a person to practice what was presented to them. And then feedback, that's where you let the learner know how well they did, what they can continue to do, what they need to improve on, or where they just flat out got something wrong. That little trifecta, if you will, those three things, when combined, make up the learning experience. And you do need people to design that, hence learning experience, or LX. You do need people who design that. Usually they're referred to as instructional designers. And their job is to put that learning experience together to generate the output of people who have that skill, that have that discipline in place. So really, really critical stuff. And when you look at education, there are many unknown benefits to education. There's structure, which I just talked about. This helps people become grounded in a particular methodology. You have collaboration. That's a part of education. That's a benefit. People who are educated learn how to collaborate. They learn how to communicate. Number 3, people who go through proper education, and I got to stress that, proper education, they develop respect for their peers as a part of the learning experience. People who go through education processes, they develop a sense of rigor and that discipline that comes out of that. That's why sometimes people who have a degree, I know people who've been upset, they said they want a degree for that position. The reason for that, one of the reasons is because people who go through formal, solid, proper, I got to say that again, educational processes, they develop these benefits, and it's consistent. No matter what a person studied, they get all these, again, structure, collaboration, communication, respect for peers, rigor. There's a balanced set of expectations for people who go through formal education processes. Those people develop a level of confidence, self-efficacy. Not only are these people confident, but they know what they know what they know. And a lot of times they know what they don't know. When you get an educated person, the self-awareness off the charts. These people know who they are. That's why when people go through proper levels of education, you don't have these people sitting around talking about how they feel like they're imposters. Because when you get educated the right way, it offsets that lack of confidence, that self-doubt. It helps to purge a person of self-doubt because of the self-efficacy that's baked into learning experiences. So you get that self-awareness that comes out of that. And last but not least, people who go through proper education, one of the last benefits, and I'm listening here, associated with education is that these people have control of their trajectory. I tell people about it from time to time. When a person goes through a master's program, the assumption was that when a person goes through a master's program, that they become a master of the topic. That's actually not true. When a person goes through a master's program, they are set on the path to mastery. Hence, they become in control. They're put in a place where they can control their trajectory. That is a beautiful, beautiful thing for somebody to be able to control their trajectory. They can control the speed, they control the direction, they can help to navigate what, how, and when they learn a particular thing. So these are the benefits of a solid educational process, a solid learning experience as a whole. Now, as we sort of shift our focus a little bit to UX in particular, let's just look at the fundamentals for a moment. When a person is getting educated as it pertains to user experience, you have your foundational elements that every person is not only supposed to learn about these things at a surface level. It's one of the reasons why I fight against boot camps, because they give people things at such a high level that it's the same as if they just went out and did a search and looked information. We've confirmed this and talked to a ton of people who've gone to boot camps. I've seen it. You could get the same learning experience, because that's a learning experience too. It's just not all that valid. It's like being self-taught, but giving somebody money for it at the same time. It's like being self-taught, but slapping some structure on top of it and then giving somebody $13,000. That's not an ethical exchange at all. I'm on record as saying that, and I'm going to continue shouting that from the hilltops. But fundamentals, people need to be grounded in usability and heuristic. That should not be a strange thing to anybody that's gone through a formal education process. And if it is, then something is wrong. If those people are not grounded as it pertains to usability and heuristics, and I'll rattle off the rest of these, information architecture, which we already mentioned, people should be grounded in that. That's at the core of every user experience. UX research, there are so many different methodologies, although there's really going to be, not going to use more than 15 or so tops on a consistent basis, but you still need to be well grounded in those. And people who are going through a learning experience, people who are going through an educational program, need to be exposed to as many of those research methods, methodologies, and techniques and the associated deliverables as they can, so that their toolbox is expanding. That's one of the other benefits that I did not mention. When a person goes through a proper educational experience, their toolbox is being populated. They have more tools to draw from, and they should have the knowledge, they should have the cognitive acumen to know when to use something. When's the right time? What am I trying to accomplish? What you're trying to accomplish should dictate what tool you use. If you're trying to screw something in, if you're trying to assemble some furniture, there's a time to take out a mallet. There's a time to take out a screwdriver. There's a time to take out a flathead screwdriver. There's a time to take out a Phillips. So using that metaphor, when somebody is well informed, they should know what's in their toolbox. They should know what everything in their toolbox is used for, and they should know when to use a particular tool in the toolbox. That's what education is about. Toolbox expansion, building a toolbox. If somebody is trying to do UX work and they have no toolbox, they cannot do UX work. And speaking of that, people who transition into UX and they come to UX, but they don't have a UX toolbox, they just have somebody willing to take a chance on them. The reality is they still don't have a toolbox. So they can't do the work. They simply cannot do the work. I just thought of another benefit. When you get educated about UX, you develop a filter. I talk about that all the time. People coming into UX have no filter. They have no filter in the discipline. They don't know how to judge what's trustworthy, what's reliable, what's accurate, and what's not. And so when you have a lot of people, as we do today, coming into UX and they don't have this filter and they're not being exposed to content that helps to further that filter, to sharpen that filter, those people cannot judge between what they should be spending time on and what they shouldn't be spending time on from a content perspective. And so a lot of people, they constantly take in misinformation. So now they're at risk. Everybody they talk to is at risk. And it just becomes this vicious cycle. It becomes a circus, if you will, with regard to what's going on in the discipline. But again, UX fundamentals, because there's one I did not mention. I'm going to go back down the list. Usability and heuristics. Education affords you that. It affords you to expand your knowledge and skills with regard to information architecture. It allows you to develop a toolbox associated with UX research. It helps you, the last one, the one I didn't mention, it helps you to understand the importance of interaction and interface design. That's where your GUI, or as some people like to call it, UI, comes into play. But you don't know what to do with the UI if you don't have all those fundamentals and all the foundational factors in place, which is why a lot of people, they just come into UX, they don't have a filter, they embrace what other people say. So 80% of people are running around saying UX/UI, and none of those people have a filter, and none of those people know where UI actually fits. I actually saw a social media post recently where somebody said that UI and UX had never been as closely related and dependent upon one another as they are today. Yes, they have. It's actually been like that the entire time. So that's just another person with no filter. And somebody said, put yourself out there. So they do. And they never take the time to get educated properly. And when your mouth precedes your brain, there's going to be problems. In other words, when people talk before they should, because they haven't thought things through, that is always going to result in problems. When people are careless, when people are reckless, because that's what that is. Another benefit, education keeps you from being reckless. It protects you from you. It's self-based hubris insurance when we take the time to get educated. And I've said all this already, and we still have not touched on what I'm trying to get to, the point that I'm trying to get to. So again, usability and heuristics, information architecture, UX research, interaction, interface design. When you get educated the right way, these fundamental elements will be in place. All the benefits, the structure, the collaboration, communication, respect for peers, the rigor, balanced expectation, confidence, self-efficacy, self-awareness, control of your own trajectory. All these things will be afforded to you if you're educated the right way. Now, but no matter the subject, this doesn't just apply to UX, but we're focused on UX, but I just got to say that for the people going, what about this other thing? We already know what that is, but this is the world of UX. I'm talking about UX, but I just thought I'd share it. No matter the subject, everybody who is subjected to properly structured education will get these benefits that I just mentioned. Now, two caveats. One, flawed educational programs will always send people down the wrong path. The benefits I just mentioned, they don't get those. Matter of fact, they get the direct opposite, and that becomes problematic. Caveat number two, there's a reason why, and I sort of talked about this already, but there's a reason why people exposed to flawed educational or learning experiences lack confidence. And I come across this on a regular basis where you have people, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. And they're crying. And I have gone through 3 formal educational experiences at the higher learning level beyond the bachelor's degree level. I have spoken to people all over the world who have been educated from several different perspectives, several different angles, several levels of excellence presented in the structure of their education. And it is the people who lack the structure who usually lack the confidence. Well, not usually, always. It's very rare for somebody to go through a formal educational program and have no self-awareness, no self-efficacy, and no confidence. You simply pretty much don't see it to the extent that those people are outliers. So education is critical. Now, I already said the next part before, but I'm going to say it again from a continuity perspective. When it comes to UX, there's no shortage of people who talk about how to do the work. Anywhere you go, social media posts, online courses, magazine articles, e-zine articles, people everywhere, the vast majority of people are talking about how to do the work. And these things are needed. But as mentioned, there is an inherent flaw with this approach. And this is the educational gap that I'm talking about, that I want to address. It shields people from reality. It shields people from reality. It keeps people from seeing what they ought to see, because they're going to come face to face with something that was not covered in any of those classes, with any of those lessons, in any of those one-on-one meetings with the professors. It's not addressed, and it's going to happen. So this is a problem. Here's a list of things resulting from the fact that reality, the source of the education gap, is omitted from many learning experiences. I'm going to share a list of things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, with a couple sub-elements here. So I'll present some of these elements as well as some sub-elements. But this is what you miss if you don't have somebody talking to you from a perspective of being realistic. What should you expect? How should you operate? So, and there's another one I'm going to throw in here. So let's say 7 with some sub items. So really going to be about 10 things I'll mention. I'm sure something else will come to mind. There will be, no matter what problem you go through, because of the education gap, you are going to miss out on learning about dysfunction. You're going to miss becoming educated about developing your awareness of dysfunction and how to manage it. For example, there will be instances of deflection. You will engage with people when you're doing UX work, and instead of operating from a standpoint of honesty and transparency and mutual professional respect, people love playing the blame game when it comes to UX professionals. And so if somebody doesn't tell you about that, and it's going to happen to you, if you're going to work in UX, somebody is going to put you in a compromising position, and then they're going to blame you, the UX person, because of how things happen, because of the lack of success. When the truth is, they probably didn't want to do research, or they didn't follow a recommendation that UX gave. There's a whole host of reasons for this. But if you're not aware of this, when they go and deflect onto UX, you're not going to be aware. You're going to be blindsided. You're not going to know how to manage it. And so now you are in a bad position. And if you have been shielded from this, you're not going to know what to do. And you're going to get caught, as some people like to say, with your pants down, that little idiom, if you will, because now you're in a position where you have no power because you didn't know what to do. You didn't document things, which you could refer back to if somebody tries to deflect. You could professionally and calmly ask the team to go back over all the different factors associated with it. You could offer solutions on how to overcome the problematic position that the team now finds himself in, instead of becoming the scapegoat or the sacrificial lamb for a thing, because that's what people will make you. And I'm here. That's why I talk about these kinds of things on the show. I don't want to see you in a position where you're being taken advantage of. I don't want to see you victimized. I don't want to see you being put in a situation where you're going to lose. So folks, you're going to encounter deflection. You're going to end up being drawn into the blame game. You're going to be put into a situation where you cannot win, and people expect something from you, and it simply isn't doable based on the circumstances. But if you document things properly, and you've got leadership that's willing to go to bat for you and stand for you and run interference for you, that's going to help you get around those things and allow you, as we talked about last week, when things go crazy with the isms, which is point number 2 here, when the isms come up, you can keep your focus on the North Star, on the work that you're trying to accomplish, the goals you're trying to achieve, and not be railroaded by or discouraged because of the deflection and the blame games you're being subject to. When the isms come up, again, point number 2, when you understand the isms, which folks don't talk about, and they come up when you're trying to do UX work. And if you're not careful, it can overwhelm you to the point that you just throw your hands up because you don't know how to proceed, especially if you've been burying yourself in the unrealistic mindset that these things don't happen and they are irrelevant. That's what people do. They fight against me. Darren, why are you talking about this stuff? Darren, why are you sharing this stuff? Darren, this makes me feel bad. It doesn't make you feel as bad as if it happens to you and you didn't know what to do. It's life. We don't feel good every day. Things aren't great all the time. Everything is not favorable. You're going to have and be subjected to unfavorable circumstances when you set out to do UX work. And you need to be ready so that when it happens, you don't go, oh my God, what's going on? I don't know what to do. You go, you know what? I was warned about this. It happened and I already have a plan and I know how to proceed. Now you can win because you know. And I said it before and I say it again. Because you have some people, they say, well, I'm an optimist. If you're an optimist and you're not teaching people how to prepare for this kind of stuff, you're setting them up for failure. And a lot of people who say they're optimists have a lot of phenomenal things to say, but they need to add this to their repertoire. I'm a realist, which means that I'm an optimist that recognizes and doesn't deny what they see. That's really what a realist is. If you have a great car, going back to the old idiom or the metaphor I mentioned earlier, you got a fantastic car, but you got a nail in your tire, you need to go and take care of that. That's what a realist does. You don't get caught up in the fact, well, I do have a great car. You better pull over as soon as you can and get that taken care of so you don't end up with another problem. Because that's what happens. If you're too much of an optimist and you're not a realist, you simply will not be able to proceed properly, and you're setting yourself up for more disappointing situations because you refuse to deal with the thing that's right in your face that's looking at you. The element of point number 3, as far as dysfunctional awareness and management goes, is competitive warfare. Yeah, it doesn't feel good, but the truth is, it happens, folks. You can work with people right on your UX team, PMs that you work with, product owners, product managers, developers. There are people out there who see you. They see their relationship with you as a means of competition. They feel like, not that you're the teammate, they don't see you as another cog that helps to get things done. They're not trying to collaborate with and cooperate with. There are a lot of people out there that see you as the competition, and that's how they operate. The people that go over your head to present designs to people in the C-suite without talking to anybody. People who will go and name drop when they're talking to teammates to make it look like they have an inroads or relationships that other people don't, to try to make themselves more self-important. They're inflating their level of importance. And so they compete. If you're not ready, number one, when these things happen, they're going to floor you, because even though I know that these things are going to happen, and they've happened to me throughout my career. And no matter what, it always takes you aback just a little bit, because it's always shocking because it's ridiculous and it shouldn't happen. But I know what it is. I know where it's coming from. So I know how to double back and do the right thing. And you want to be in that kind of a position. So, but competitive warfare, it happens. And why are you saying warfare, Derek? Because that's what it feels like. It feels like you're in a battle, because now when somebody decides to compete, previously you were focused on the work. Me, I'm focused on the team. I'm trying to vault the team forward. I'm trying to vault my teammates forward. And over the course of my career, throughout my career, I have always been subjected to somebody that's trying to compete instead of trying to cooperate. And you have to turn your attention back to doing the right thing, because it can overwhelm you, and you can find yourself in a position that, if you're not careful, you're no longer focused on getting the work done. You're focused on trying to overcome the competition that you're in. So very distracting, but folks, it is very, very real. And in a standard educational or learning experience, nobody talks about these things, even though they're a reality and they're going to happen. Next, you need to be able to manage friction. You need to be able to manage friction. There's going to be friction, as based on the story I told recently. There's a thing called healthy friction. Changed my career. When I was going to walk away from the discipline, when I learned about healthy friction and it was explained to me, it helped me to ground myself in the work the right way. It helped me to maintain my focus on the North Star. But it wasn't until somebody gave me that download and helped me to learn about the reality of healthy friction that I was in a position to win. So that was really, really critical. So you have to be able to manage friction. You have to be able to manage up. And nobody talks about managing friction, and nobody talks about managing up. How you have to manage, I talked about this at length recently, but you have to be able to manage relationships with people who outrank you in cases, especially where they're threatened by you, or they don't have a certain level of UX maturity, or they just don't know how to engage with UX people. Very common that you come across people who never worked with UX people before. They really don't know what to think. And if their UX maturity level is low, a lot of times they think that you're there to make things pretty, and that's how they're going to engage with you. And so you're going to have to do the work and educate at the same time. And that's part of managing up as well. But managing up is a reality. Again, it doesn't get covered in a lot of UX courses, the vast majority of them. You don't learn about the broad awareness of pitfalls, which I've been talking about off and on here, interpersonal roadblocks, just the difficulty with getting along with certain people. He talks about that. It's available in other classes. It's not available in UX classes. People don't talk about it. And these are problems that keep you from getting the work done, folks. You need to be aware of the pitfalls, the types of pitfalls, which I liken it to construction signs on a trip, like the metaphor that I mentioned earlier. The political monkey wrenches that we get pulled into. You're trying to get something done, and then it becomes a political battle. So now you're trying to get the designs together. You're trying to conduct research, and now there's a political battle, and you find yourself in the crossfire between two people with opposing viewpoints. Neither one of them are paying attention to the data that you've gathered in your research. Well, you need to be aware of these things. And people don't talk about this in classes. It doesn't come up. For the record, I bring them up. I make it a point to bring these up so my students learn about them. The mirage of HR. You can have problems that arise, and you may think that human resources is going to help you. And there's a lot of content about this that's out there. Shout out to the people I know that work in HR that are really great HR professionals. There are some. I worked in HR for 4 years. Yep, I did. I do have an HR program. I do have an HR background. And it's funny, somebody tried to give me advice once that was HR related, and I just laughed because the person didn't know that I had an HR background. So I already knew what HR might be looking for and how they would respond and how they would work when it came to certain things. So I just sort of chuckled because that person just assumed I didn't have that information, but I did. But the mirage of HR is that HR is there to help you, and that should be what they do. But in the vast majority of instances out there, that is not the case. So we need to know how to manage these situations ourselves. We need to know how to recognize what's going on. We need to be able to go to our leaders within UX first so that our leaders can guide us, because they will have the relationships and the understanding about how HR works in your given organization to help you navigate around this uncomfortable scenario that you may find yourself in. And somebody may be thinking, yeah, Darren, that has nothing to do with UX. Why would people in my class talk about that? Because they need to talk about it, because again, if you focus on the work only, you're just going to be set up for failure because your expectations are going to be skewed. They're going to be dysfunctional because you will assume that HR is going to work on your behalf, and that's not necessarily the case. So learn how to manage those things through your UX leadership first, and then go from there. And then lastly, you will not learn how to achieve psychological safety in the workplace in your UX educational experiences. Nobody's going to talk about that. Now, let me say this before I start to wrap up. It is generally not the job of the people who design the curriculum that you're taking to inform about these. These types of things are usually going to come up from a professor who is working in the discipline. That's one of the dangers of learning about UX from people who do not have boots on the ground. People who don't have boots on the ground, people who don't understand what it's like to do the work on a regular basis, they will understand none of these things. And here's the sad thing. A lot of institutions are opting for having non-practitioners teach UX courses. They know how to operate and follow a syllabus. They know how to follow a lessons plan, but they don't know how to inform you about what you're going to encounter. So again, the educational gap, I'm not trying to put blame on anybody. I'm just trying to make people aware that a lot of people simply are not going to address this because the pieces are not in place to address it. Just so you understand that as well. What can we do to counter this? To counter it, keep your ears open. I'm about to put together something. I sort of let the cat out of the bag about something I want to do to help the UX community out. I'm about to put together a list. I've seen these before, people you should follow in social media. And in particular, it's usually focused on LinkedIn. I'm about to do one too, but I call it the Magnificent Seven. And I'm going to highlight 7 people that everybody should follow in UX. And one thing that all 7 of these people have in common is that not only will they tell you how the work is done, but they will also help you to understand the pitfalls, the interpersonal roadblocks, the political monkey wrenches, all those things that the formal educators don't tell you about. And also, I'm not telling you to turn your back on the formal educational resources. That's not what I'm saying in this. I'm just trying to show everybody that there is a gap and that there are resources that will help you to fill the gap. The sad thing is people try to steer folks away from the resources that will fill the gap, all while they refuse to fill the gap because they don't want to be the bearer of bad tidings. If you, at least that's the way that they view it. And so they indirectly and passively encourage people to engage in ostrich effect bias because they want you to stick your head in the ground. I have talked about the things that I share. I've been at events where I've been having conversations, maybe during networking time. And on one occasion, I was actually talking to the group at large. In another instance, I was just networking and I was talking to people before the formal part of the program started. And in both situations, both people responded the same way. They both shushed me like they were talking to their little child or something. Why are you talking about that? Shh, Darren. Shh. No. And now, because people are everywhere, people are being quiet about these things. That's why a lot of people are being hurt. That's why people I know have walked away from the discipline, just like I was going to do in 2008. They walked away because they did not know what to do. They got tired of the friction. They didn't differentiate between the healthy friction and the unhealthy friction, because when you see healthy friction and you identify it, it's easier to proceed forward. But then you have instances where there's unhealthy friction, and that you just need to navigate. You need to manage it. You need to approach it a particular way using EQ, as I mentioned last week. And that helps you get to a point where everybody wins. I've seen people, I've interacted with people where the interactions were unhealthy friction. But because of the way that I proceeded, today I can have sound interactions and relationships. I know some people who were in a different discipline, visual designers, developers, who ended up transitioning into UX, and we can have phenomenal conversations today because of the way that the unhealthy friction was handled at that time. So there are ways to win. I've seen it. I know it. There are ways to win in these situations, but we have to be aware of it first and foremost, and we have to approach it the right way. Folks, in wrapping up, I share with you another metaphor. When we learn how to drive, we learn how to steer, we learn how to stop, We learn how to accelerate. We learn how to navigate. We learn how to be attentive to the different signs on the road, the traffic lights. We learn how to pay attention to everybody around us. We learn how to read the gauges and the different semiotic-based elements within the vehicle. We learn about how to pay attention to various warnings when we're out and about. We learn how to position the seat the right way. We learn how to not be distracted drivers. We learn about a whole host of things. But the successful people, the successful drivers, are the ones who make the most of these things when they learn them. But then you get those people who either don't pay attention when they're being taught, or they cut corners, they ignore key factors, or they fail to operate their vehicle in an empathetic manner. They fail to be considerate. And those people who do those things, they pose a threat to themselves and to others. And so likewise, education is about preparing somebody to operate confidently and effectively in a particular discipline. It just needs the cooperation of the learner in order to produce the product in conjunction with that. So folks, proper engagement with the institution, and it is an institution, by the way, of education, it helps drive UX maturity forward. It helps us to represent the discipline the right way. It helps us to engage the right way, but cutting corners or ignoring proper educational factors, not honoring, respecting the institution of education, it results in accidents. More on the driving metaphor, it results in hindrances and a whole host of other problems. Most notably, it drags UX maturity down. So education as an institution, let's strive to respect it. Let's strive to approach it the right way. And somebody saying, Darren, I hear you. Everything you hear, I can relate to it. I get it. I can't pay to go through a degree program. Don't forget, I was self-taught initially, and I approached it a certain way. I'm working on a framework for self-learning for people who can't get a degree. I know how to achieve the right thing. Because remember, I'm also an instructional designer. My PhD is in educational leadership. I know how to structure educational programs. I have 6 instructional design certifications. So I almost know as much about instructional design as I do about UX. So I know how to do it. It can be done, but you still have to respect the institution of education, and you have to lay a solid foundation with the fundamentals of the discipline and then build on that. When we do that, we'll achieve things the right way. And again, we'll benefit everybody that we interact with. It's the people who ignore education or engage with improper educational resources. That's where the problems come from. And if we can straighten that out, because people ask, how can we fix UX today? Fixing education would help. If all bad educational resources were to shut down, which they won't, then that would be better off, because now we have less people feeding into folks going down the wrong paths and sending people down the wrong paths, because that's what the bad educational resources are doing today, whether it's an article, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a MOOC course on Udemy or edX or whatever. Folks, education needs to be better. People have to respect it more. People have to engage the right way. When we do these things, we'll be better off for it. That's it for this topic, UX maturity and the educational gap. I hope you got something out of this. Most importantly, I hope you embrace it. But until next time, this is Dr. Darren Hood, the host of The World of UX, wishing everybody all the best. And until next week, happy UXing, everybody.